what I would say to men out there, it's a dangerous place when anytime somebody is correcting something that you take on the attitude, I'm being hated on, or I have to defend myself or fight back or be right. I don't care how old you are, 45, 40, 30, 55. You need some voice in your life that can correct something, critique something, criticize something, and you don't go and pout about it. Hey, it's Rich, and you're listening to the Mature Me podcast, weekly content devoted to all things life, leadership, culture, and faith. Thank you for taking some time to tune in. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on all our social channels so you don't miss a thing. Let's listen to today's episode. Well, hey everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Mature Me podcast. My name is Rich Wilkerson. I'm joined by my brother-in-law, Dakota Duron. Dakota, how are you feeling today?
Feeling great. Excited to be here.
I always love when you're on with us, and we just want to remind everybody out there, if you're watching by way of YouTube, like, subscribe, share this content. It helps us so much. Also, leave us a comment. Leave us a question. Tell us something that you like. Love hearing from you. In fact, where are you watching from? It's been really encouraging to see people watching from all over the world. I was looking the other day, and someone from Germany was watching.
Very cool.
And it's just cool that we get to talk to so many people, that we get to kind of invite you into our living room and have hopefully conversations that bring change. And right here on this podcast, it's all about growing up. It's all about maturing in the Lord. You're becoming something. The question is, who are you becoming? Mm-hmm. I've always said it this way. Who you are today is not nearly as important as who you're becoming tomorrow. And that's what we want to do right here on the Mature Me podcast. I just turned 40 years of age. Dakota just turned 30. How do you feel about that?
I feel good. I feel like when I turned 30, I had to have this moment of just acceptance. I think that's part of Mature Me. It's absolutely going, I'm going to own this season. And I am 30. I'm going to say it. I'm owning it. I'm excited about it.
Don't you feel like 40 is so much worse than 30? Or do you not feel that at 30?
I don't feel that at 30.
But 40 feels super old, right?
Older.
I
feel like there's so many people in their 40s right now in our world in the area of influence that are still influencing. They've been influencing from like since the end of their 20s into their 40s.
Who do you think is actually cool in their 40s?
Oh man, this is a dangerous question.
But is there something that comes to your mind quick? Like, who dresses cool at 40 in your mind? A guy. Do you even why would you have a reference? You're 30. I'll tell you. Very few people.
Yeah.
Beckham.
Yeah, for sure.
I think he's 50.
Are you kind of saying Beckham?
I'm
confidently
By the way,
saying
David, if you're listening,
Beckham. You're an incredible. Yeah.
David, if you're listening, you know I love you.
He's got an incredible aesthetic.
No, your entire palette and the way
it's just a thing.
I don't know what to wear.
Yeah.
Is really what I'm trying to get at 40.
So you're saying that the pool of cool shrinks.
I'm using
at
that.
40?
Of course.
That's how you feel?
Of course. Yeah, but
okay.
like you, I'm having to accept this. And we started this at 29 and 39. Yeah. And now we are stepping into 30 and 40. And it's a brand new era.
How was it for you saying you're 40?
I don't really like it yet, but hey, I'm leaning into it.
Yeah.
And I'm admitting that. But I'm also just going to say, here I am, Lord. Use me.
You can use me, Lord.
You can use me, Lord.
Shout out Ryan Horton.
You can use me,
hit a run real quick.
Lord.
That was really good.
It's really beautiful. And that is my word for you today. One of the things that we always want to remind you of is every Tuesday morning, I release a Leadership with Rich email. Sign up for that right now. You can go to richwilkersonjr.com, and we will get you that fresh, hot off the press every Tuesday at 6 a.m. Love hearing the stories about that now. Close to, I think, 10,000 people are subscribing to that email. And really, it's just a way to get content wherever you're using that. You can use that at your business. You can use that at your church. Of course, you can even use that at your family. That I think that as we begin to lead, we need different handles of how we're teaching the things that God's doing in our life. So go ahead and get that email. Also, Dakota, take 30 seconds. Tell everyone about VuCon this summer.
Yeah, I think VuCon has entered into just a new season. I think we've done the arena. Has it been 3 times now?
Yeah. Yep.
And I feel like there was last year something that was lit, and it's just a real community that's forming. So more than just coming to see guests, more than just coming to have an awesome worship experience, I think if you can get in the room and bring your team in the room, I think you're going to see that you're not just a part of an event, but you can be a part of a beautiful community. I think it's so fun for people all over the world to come into Miami, but more than just the city of Miami, what's happening specifically at VooCon. You can come to Voo Church all year long. We'd love to have you. But if there's one weekend that you're going to come to Miami, I promise you it should be VooCon. It's been life-changing for me. And I think this year, just the things that we've learned and the things that we've been doing, the things we're about to do for the first time, I think it's going to be the best one we've ever had.
I love that you're saying that too, because I really do envision VooCon being much more than an event, but really a community. I think that has started to form.
Yeah.
And 3 days this summer. The dates are Pilar, what? June
20th, 21st,
June
22nd.
20th through the 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I hope that's the true. That is the dates. June 20th through the 22nd. We're at the Watsco Arena. You are invited. Robert Madu, Ryan Horton, John Wild, Elevation Rhythm, Cody and Carrie, and many, many more. Dakota and I will be there, and it won't be the same without you.
Yeah.
Make plans to be in Miami this summer. It's going to be great. That's a lot of the announcements that are happening, but today we are really privileged because we've got someone I think very special in the house. I'm excited to talk to my friend. He's a pastor, he's a husband, he's a father, he's an amazing, amazing man. And we're going to talk a little bit about manhood today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Mature Me podcast, Pastor Robbie Hilton. Robert, I love that.
Robert's
I'm thinking
actually-
Robert Madu.
Is that your real name?
Robert's my real name.
It is.
Boom.
My
I've
real
never
name
called
is
you
Government
Robert,
name.
It's Nathan Robert Hilton.
Whoa, Nathan.
I go by Robbie because my grandmother thought Nathan was too old of a name for a little baby, so her name was Bobby. So they called me
Really?
Robbie.
That's
Yeah.
sick.
Isn't it funny, though, because I am Richard and you are Robert. This is Robbie Hilton, by the way.
Yeah, Robbie Hilton.
Pastors in Johnson City, Tennessee, Calvary Church. We'll talk all about the family. But you do go by Robbie. How old are you?
45.
Okay.
Someone who dresses
Okay.
cool in
I really
Robbie
felt I should have
Hilton.
been mentioned.
Okay, so there is.
Robbie
I
Hilton.
was a little angry,
Okay.
but whatever.
I
It's
felt like
fine.
we hadn't introduced you
Yeah,
yet.
it's
That's
true.
Yeah,
why
we
it's
hadn't
straight.
introduced you
Yeah,
yet.
it's
We didn't
true.
want
I
to.
get it.
Oh,
Biased
man. 45. You're very cool. So I do have a
Thanks.
point of reference there. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
It is interesting. Robbie, why did you never switch to Rob or Robert?
I liked it. I love Robbie,
So
we just
good.
stuck with it. Yeah, I like Nathan, but it felt like too formal.
No, but you know what I love? Because I'm Richard Preston Wilkerson Jr., named after my father. And I don't know if we've talked about this before, but my sons, Wyatt, Wild, and my daughter, Waylon, we're at this stage right now where my kids, Wyatt in particular, is really unhappy. Like, Dad, why didn't you name me after you?
Oh.
And it's gotten worse because Dakota just had his first son, and Dakota, who's traditional, with
Real creative name.
with an untraditional
Real creative.
girl's name.
Yeah.
Like, Rich, why is that a girl's name? Named his son Dakota,
Yeah.
but they call him
Yeah.
Dak. So my son has heard that Dakota, his favorite uncle, named his son after him. It's like, Dad, why didn't you name me
Okay.
after you? And it's funny because I'm like, oh, I thought I was doing you right because I was always a junior. And that's like it was kind of hard at times for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when I was growing up, I was called Richie. And I hated being called Richie, to be honest with you. And when we moved to Miami at 14, I switched to Rich. But now at 40, I would do anything to be likable, young, friendly. I would go back to Richie
Richie.
tomorrow.
Inner-
That's a long way to say
Inner
that.
child.
So you had foresight, bro. Talk about that. How did you
I
know
did.
that Robbie would be cool at 45? I should.
was
If I was
ready.
Richie right now, you'd be like, that guy's probably 30. That guy's maybe
Similar
29.
story. My brother is actually the junior. So my dad is Richard Lee Hilton. My brother is Richard Lee Hilton Jr. I
Wow,
got
those are
passed
some-
over as
Those
well.
are some Southern names. Richard Lee Hilton.
Yeah, the
Jr.
blessing went to the second. Kind of a
That's
biblical
biblical,
thing
yeah.
there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Should I go by Richie?
I think you got a good thing going, you know?
If
I
you
like
knew me as
Richie.
Richie, you never knew me as Richie.
No, your family, whenever we have family gatherings on
Yeah.
the Wilkerson side, they'll definitely, your mom, you know, your aunt.
Would you trust a Richie?
I feel like as you know, I think Robbie and Richie are different.
Oh, you do?
It's way different.
I think it's very different.
You do?
I think Richie is for
Yeah.
sure a nickname, and I think Robbie could just be a name.
it's a real name.
I think you guys are thinking that because the famous Robbie Williams.
possibly.
Do you know one Robbie Williams song?
No.
My God.
I was like, hold on, who are we talking about?
You don't know who Robbie Williams
I don't
is?
think so.
Wait, is that Matchbox 20?
Robbie Williams.
Is that the
Oh
lead
my
singer? I don't
Gosh,
know. Who
is that Matchbox 20?
I feel like that's the lead singer.
No,
for Matchbox
that
Robbie.
guy. That's Rob.
Schneider.
No, come on. That's
Rob
not Robbie
Schneider.
Schneider. Matchbox 20 does not compare with Robbie Williams. I was about to say Robbie Hilton from England. Robbie Williams is
Rob Thomas.
Thank
there
you
it is.
so
there
much.
it is. Yeah, sorry.
Robbie
sorry,
Williams
Rob
is
Thomas.
the greatest, one of the greatest English pop stars ever out of England. Okay, so
Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Do you know Robbie Williams?
yes, his biggest song is, well, I mean, there's a lot out there, but the biggest one is the Angels song. It's like, help me out. Yes, there's Julia's singing it.
No.
It really takes a whole lot of soul to sing a Robbie Williams song, which I have, but I'm not going to bring it right now.
We're going to
something
start
about
doing an over-under on how many songs
it When
you're
Angels
gonna
Cry?
sing
Is that what it's
per
called?
podcast.
just Angels, yeah. But anyways, I just feel like you got to know who the guy is if you're named Robbie.
No.
For me, my last name is Duron.
Yeah.
But my grandfather, his name was actually Duron, Doiron.
So you guys switched it up.
And his kindergarten teacher couldn't pronounce it or spell it correctly. She started spelling it that way. He took it throughout school. It's on his driver's license, and that name's been passed down to us. It's a whole biblical thing.
Wow.
You know?
So it's not even your
change
name.
of name.
It's not even my name. So if you type in like some people oh, my last name's Duron, there's no way we're related because just 4 generations ago that wasn't even our name.
So you're a fraud.
Very fraudulent, and it's played with my identity for sure.
Well, you lack an origin story.
Correct.
You ever see the Joker?
We've detached from our origin story.
If you're one step away from being the Joker.
Well, I don't want to be that. I want to be redeemed. That's what I love about God. That's the thing about naming things.
There it is.
Because we were given a name.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's think about the 3
Yes.
Hebrew boys.
Yes.
What was the first thing that happened? They were renamed.
You better
Yeah.
preach that.
You understand what I'm trying to say is
Yeah.
the reason that my grandfather was renamed
Hey.
is because his teacher was incompetent.
Oh
hey,
my gosh.
and now, hey,
Woo!
hey,
So the reason you're getting an identity that
Why?
ain't you is not because they're just spiteful, but they're incompetent. Only one person can give you your identity.
you better preach that.
That's
No,
all right.
but use our
I'll
favorite
stop.
transition to make this applicable to the audience. What's our favorite phrase to make this applicable to the people that are listening? Because this is probably not for everyone.
It's for someone though.
Some of you.
Some of you, yeah, that's sorry. It's the best transition we have right now.
No, we're sick of
There's
that
a portion
transition.
of you, a portion of this room that's listening. Just
We're looking, Robbie, maybe you can help us just in the category of preaching.
Yeah.
A lot of preaching. I will go first.
Uh-huh.
Does this thing. Some of you, some of you don't know your name.
Yeah.
Any other better phrase instead of some of
I
you?
say all of you.
that's pretty phenomenal.
all of you.
I don't want to miss anybody.
Yeah.
All of you.
You want to
all
make
of
sure
you.
everyone's
Yeah.
listening all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. All of you.
Yeah,
I
all
feel
of
like what you said, some portion of you,
Yeah.
a group of you,
Many of you.
There's a remnant
many
of you.
There's
many
a
of you.
remnant of you.
some of us.
Us is a good.
Yeah.
Some of us
good.
lack
Us is
identity. It's like,
better.
Rich, you don't know your identity. What are you
Us is
teaching me
better.
for? Yeah. Yeah, that's the problem. You use
Yeah.
the us stuff
Anytime you
in the
use
wrong moment.
us,
You
it's
know?
like you're
Some of us
already-
are going to hell.
Right. Whoa.
You? Yeah. Some of us
Some
are
of-
serving the devil.
Some of us are struggling with their salvation today. It's like,
bro, that's
Are you
not
saved?
the time to
Or-
use that.
yeah.
I'll go first. Like what? All right, sorry. Sorry.
Go.
But some of you. Okay, bro, I'm tired of that. Oh, I'm gonna buzz
We're
myself every
leaving
time
that
I
in
say
this
it.
episode.
It's amazing.
Buzz myself.
All right, so back to mature me. My name's Richie Wilkerson. Honestly, true story. If I went by Richie Wilkerson, would that be hard for you guys?
If we are we doing it just today?
No, what if I tried to
Change.
publicly change to Richie?
No.
That'd be weird to you?
I think it would be
let's
weird, but
not.
it wouldn't be hard.
Yeah, it
I
would be
think I
hard.
could
We
make
could do
the
it.
switch pretty quickly.
Try it.
Let's do it today.
Just try it.
Richie,
What do you think
Richie?
about pastor in front of that? Pastor Richie.
Pastor Richie?
Sounds
do you
mad
allow
weird,
people
bro.
to say that?
I don't
Yeah,
trust.
that's
I don't
weird.
trust it. I don't trust it.
Are there any Pastor Richies?
Probably. That's why I feel bad saying I don't trust it. But I got to be honest with you. I don't trust you.
So Richie, what do you think about?
Yeah. See, it sounds weird. I'm not ready for it.
Yeah.
But I do think it sounds friendly.
But I think Robbie doesn't. I think Robbie is a name. So that's what I'm saying. It's different.
Yeah,
it's
it is
approach.
different.
It's Richie's
No,
approachable.
we trust you and you're friendly.
Rich is like,
and it's cool that you're 45 and you wear good clothes. So
this is where you're headed.
yeah,
Look at this.
This is we're
this
wasting
gray.
a lot of people's time this morning, but it's amazing because I'm laughing. Robbie, tell us a little bit because I there's some things I want to talk about particularly and specifically. But before we get there, I always think it's just good. Maybe just tell people about who you are, where you're from, how you maybe even got into pastoring today.
Yeah, 45. from Tennessee.
Weight,
Johnson
height.
City, Tennessee. From Johnson City, Tennessee. Family moved there when I was 8 years old. My dad traveled in ministry, planted a church when I was 8, and for about 30 years he pastored that church. And then 10 years ago, my wife and I transitioned into the leadership of that church, and we've been doing that for 10 years. It's been incredible, and not what I wanted to do with my life. Still kind of a very reluctant preacher, podcaster, whatever. Loved sports, loved that area, wanted to go down that road, but God's wind just kept blowing on this ministry thing. And so here I am, and I'm 45, but I'm starting to really get comfortable in this world that God's called me to.
I think it's so cool.
Yeah.
Where was your family from? How'd you guys end up in Johnson City?
My father was from Tennessee.
Okay.
And so he was born in Elizabethton, which is the city adjacent to Johnson City. So it was wild. The last place he wanted to go was home to plant a church. And he went home for a visit, met with some guys in the church, and not in the church at that time, but just some guys he knew. They had breakfast at a McDonald's. They asked him to plant a church. He went home, opens the door. My mom's weeping. She says, I think God spoke to me this morning, and I think we're supposed to plant a church. So that was like the confirmation moment. He had a breakfast. She was having an encounter with God, and that's how it happened. Left the road, and yeah.
Wow. Tell us where Johnson City is in terms of Tennessee.
Johnson City is east of Knoxville, about an hour and a half.
Okay.
And we're close to 2.5, 3 hours from Charlotte, almost in Asheville. We're about 45 minutes from Asheville. Yeah.
Asheville is the place of where Billy Graham's at?
Mm-hmm.
No.
There's I think there's something there like
the museum or something.
Yeah, something like. But most of his stuff, there's a lot of stuff in Charlotte with him too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
And so now you've been leading the church for how long?
10 years. This past October.
Wow, let's go.
Yeah.
Happy 10 years.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're excited. It's been good.
10 years.
What was that like hitting 10 years? When you saying like it kind of took you a while to maybe step in fully to going, this is my world. Like, is that 10 year? Was that a big part of that? Or
yeah, well, I feel like it took the church about 5 years to feel like I was the leader. Not that anything was bad with my father or anything. It just was, he was the planner. He was such a big personality. Had such an incredible gift, him and my mom both. And so taking that role felt like a lot of maintenance early, just kind of maintaining, making sure I didn't mess anything up. I actually told him when we took over, I was like, we need to work in something like, you know how cars have like a lemon law, like within a certain period of time, you can come and take this thing back if it doesn't work out. And so I was so nervous about it, but it worked. And about 5 years in, it started to kind of turn and feel like I was leading it, and the people I was leading, the culture was changing. And so 10 years felt like a celebration of all of that. It felt so normal and natural, and we're really into an incredible season in our church, and God's blessing, and we're remodeling and expanding, and so we're having fun buying land and having a lot of fun.
You said you kind of mentioned that your dad was like a planner. Is your leadership style much different from his?
Yeah, I think that was the thing about transition that was so necessary. It wasn't like, I mean, he was 59 years old when he turned the church over to us. So it wasn't like he couldn't preach anymore, he'd run out of vision or whatever. I think the big thing was like a transition of leadership style needed to happen. So he was, when you're the planner so much early on, especially if you've gone to a place where, you grew up and there's a little bit of resistance and people aren't sure why you're there. And so it felt like early on, like all of the ideas and all the creativity and everything was him. So the ministry had a real, like, kind of an old school kind of like, there's the man of God, he leads the church. And I was like a team builder. I'd always been on teams because of sports. So I was like, we need to put people here. And I think me being the lead pastor put me in a better position to position people. And so that helped with our church, and it just started to explode from there because I was given such an incredible thing.
What sports did you play growing up?
Basketball, baseball.
Let's go. But basketball
Not
was your
not a
favorite?
lot of football in my family. My brother played a little bit of football, but I liked football. I just wanted to stay healthy for basketball season.
Because basketball is your favorite.
Yeah.
What
yeah.
position you play in basketball?
I was point guard.
Let's go.
Ball hog.
Who's the greatest point guard in the history of the NBA? In your opinion?
I'm gonna say greatest point guard in history of the NBA is Magic Johnson.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that your favorite as well?
Solid.
Yeah, I think so. I just feel like he saw things that everybody else didn't see. A lot of guys are like that now, but I think he was really the innovator.
Was John Stockton a
seeing
point
the floor
guard?
that way. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. Man.
He was great too.
Great white hope.
Steve Nash is a great point guard.
Steve Nash. You love Mike Bibby.
I loved Mike Bibby.
Mike Bibby was fantastic.
I'll take my favorite NBA player.
John Stockton made all
Jason
guys
Williams.
like my size
Jason Williams.
and build feel like we could play in the NBA, but we couldn't actually.
John Stockton.
He was an
amazing,
animal.
Jason Williams. You know that Jason Williams, they called him White Chocolate. Jason Williams actually went to high school. Do you know this?
with Randy Moss.
Yes, bro.
Really?
He was quarterback.
Yep.
And
Jason
Randy
Williams-
Moss, by the way, was filthy at
He was
basketball.
Randy Moss's quarterback in high school.
Wow.
And they were lights
didn't
out
know that.
together. And they both played basketball and football together. And they kind of say could have gone pro and
I hear
both
Jason
sports.
Williams still hoops like in rec leagues and just dominates.
Jason Williams is so nasty, bro.
Some of his highlights, he does things that I'm like,
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that.
It just gave me, hope.
Yeah.
It gave me a lot of hope.
I love
What you
him.
needed.
Gave me some street cred that I was always looking for.
Yeah.
You know,
You got that jersey.
you got that. I got that jersey, bro.
Basketball, like in that region that you grew up, is so much bigger than football anyway, right?
It is. It is. Football's great, but man, we got a lot of great basketball talent in that area. Right now, it's kind of shifted. It's kind of a baseball community. So like the real pros, the people that are going professional from our area are baseball players right now. Yeah. But we've had, like our claim to fame in Johnson City, Elizabethton is Jason Witten went to Elizabethton High
Okay.
School, and he's a all-time tight end in the
No
NFL.
doubt.
So
And a believer, like that guy. That's
a
my dad.
believer.
By the way, that's
he's
my
a believer.
dad.
Me
Any
too.
sports we were watching?
His older brother goes to our church.
My dad, if we're watching sports, he's like, "Hey, guy's a believer." I'm like,
Guy's a
"We're-
believer.
We're definitely going for that guy."
Born again.
Did your dad do
Born
that?
again.
Of course.
Your dad do
Yeah.
that?
all the time.
By the way, I'm gonna do it with my kids too. Hey, boys, he's a believer.
Before a big game, usually my dad's doing research, and like whichever team has more believers.
Really?
That's who he's rooting for. he's
Bro,
like
that's my
if he can
dad.
find an article that there was a move of God on a specific team, that's like, which is awesome. That's like his team.
Witten's
My
a
dad
believer.
cannot like your music, your movies, but if you get up and you get your award and you're like, I just want to thank my Lord and Savior,
I like that guy.
he'll like, Dad, Robbie, did you see?
I like that.
Yeah, I like this
I like
guy.
that. Yo, real recognizes
That's
real,
my
bro.
guy,
yeah.
That's my guy, bro. This is the fraternity of saints, man.
Yes,
we're,
sir.
we're sticking together. So being from Johnson City, what's cool is I think that like God's really touching your church, and I feel like you were just recently at our church preaching, and man, there's like you have such a beautiful gift, dynamic preacher, powerful. But in many ways, a lot of people haven't heard of Johnson City very
Right.
much, but what God's beginning to do there, I really believe it's not just going to impact that area, but it's impacting the surrounding areas and even beyond.
Yeah.
I'm working on this message right now, coming for this weekend, out of John chapter 1, where Nathaniel goes, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?"
Yeah.
And what a beautiful passage, because I
Yeah.
think sometimes when we think about influence or we think about making a name or doing something great, we think that we have to have all, the cards lined up perfectly. But
Right.
even our Savior, Jesus, comes from this small town that
yeah.
seemed insignificant,
Yeah.
seemed small, seemed overlooked. Can anything good come from Nazareth? Here's this version of skepticism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How has that been for you? Like just as you've stepped into more and more influence and more leadership, because we're talking about maturing and growing. And I
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about manhood, because there's some things I think that you
Very
really bring to the
good.
table. How have you been able to get over some of like the restrictions or the skepticism of like what you need to have in order to
Right.
do something great for God or to do something significant?
Yeah, I wrestled with those early on too. There was a part of me that was like, I don't want to take my dad's church. It's in the middle of nowhere. I want to go to Charlotte, or I want to go to Atlanta. Send me there. And once I realized that like your gift does not just have an ability, but it's also got a people, I started to realize like these are my people. Like
you go.
I could go somewhere else and my gift might work there, but I don't know that God would be there. And so I started to realize, okay, God is here. God is blessing this. These are literally the people that God is calling me to. And I fell in love with my city. You know, in the same way you love Miami and people love LA and New York, and I love Johnson City. It's not a lot going on there, but it's enough for me. And so I've really gotten confident with the place God has called me to and the people God has called me to. And so I feel like Johnson City is a world-class church in a city that is not known to the world. I mean, you have to zoom in, you know, to really far to see Johnson City on the map. And but I don't think it's always going to be that way. You know, I was telling somebody the other day, they were like, what's in your city? I was like, well, we don't have great shopping. We don't have like Ritz-Carltons and Four Seasons. I think Calvary Church is the Ritz-Carlton of our city. And so I think people are going to come from all over to see what God's doing there. I think we're building something that's going to last long after I'm gone. And so, yeah, I'm blessed, man. I love where I'm at.
I think that perspective is so important. Like what you just said. I love Johnson City, not because it has all, I love my city.
Yeah.
The perspective, I don't know if I've ever heard it that way. Your gift is not just your ability. Your gift is a people. That's beautiful. Your gift is your family. Your gift is your friends. Your gift is the city that you live in. And I think, obviously, we know the power of life and death is in the tongue. And for me, one of the things that, like, I hear immediately, probably because I'm looking for it a little bit, is I was from, like, a Johnson City in Louisiana. I wasn't from, like, a famous, people are always like, oh, you're from Louisiana? Where are you from? And I know what they're asking. You from New Orleans? I'm like, nah, bro. I'm basically from East Texas. You know what I mean?
Once a year, though.
I'm from Shreveport. It probably happens to you sometimes, too. I'm from Tennessee. Where are you from? Nashville? No, I'm from Johnson City. And they're like, oh, yeah, cool, bro. You know,
well, I used to do that. I used to say, like, Knoxville, where east of Knoxville. And I'm like, no, Johnson City. That's where I live.
Nazareth, bro.
Yeah.
Legit.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes what can happen is we can get in a comparison game, or we can go, I wish my city was this, or I wish my city is that. And I think the mature me as Christians, it sounds silly. I really do believe we can make more of a difference if we actually love the place that we live. There's people in Miami. I think Miami is one of the greatest cities in the world. But there are people that live in Miami. They're like, man, I could go up to Central Florida and buy a 4-bedroom for $400,000. I'm like, then go. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't like it here, like, there's no reason to talk bad about the place that we've been charged to reach. So if you're going to be here,
go all in.
Like it here. Like it or not, this city is what it is. And
you
so let's like it for what it is.
Exactly. You know what happened to me? I was at a church in a small community. A lot of the stuff, you know, when I was in my 20s and 30s was just like youth camps in the middle of nowhere. Like, and I remember going to church this first time in some of these smaller churches and smaller communities on Sundays, and the pastor almost like feeling embarrassed of his people. Like they were too backwards or too country or whatever. And I felt so bad for his people. And I thought it was convicting because I had felt that way a couple times when I had had guests come from larger cities come in and be like, oh, I don't want this person to talk to them, or I don't want. But it, you know, I'm really proud of our people. I'm really grateful for the people that God has put around me. I love the area. I love that they're into NASCAR. I love it. I love country music. Like I've fallen in love with the people that God has called me to, and it has made all the difference.
Well, it's very, very important because that type of leadership is leadership that's worth following.
Yeah.
That type of leadership is worth getting behind and saying, let's do something.
Yeah.
And I actually love that whole like concept of like, I can get a house in Central Florida for $400,000. It's like, go get it. Only problem is you won't be in Miami.
Right. Like, you know why it's expensive to live here? I always tell people, you know why it's expensive to live here? Because everybody wants to live here. So we can get mad about that, or we can go, this is a blessing.
Totally.
Yeah.
And if you're called to Central Florida, and if you're called to Johnson City, then go own that.
Yes.
And my uncle, who used to be, if you can believe it, on the coaching staff for the University of Washington football team.
Yeah.
And his favorite little saying was, "This is the big time."
There you go.
Right here,
this
is the
it.
big time.
Yes.
And that's just a powerful phrase to live by. And I think when we talk about maturing and growing and walking in authenticity and walking in leadership, you have to have that kind of a mindset.
Yeah.
This right here, what I'm doing is the big time. I haven't ever found a successful person who believed that somehow the big thing was way out there. Every successful person I know was wherever they were at, they treated it like it was the big time. They treated it like what they were doing mattered. The work that they had, whether that was cleaning the office or that was owning the office, they both stewarded those moments, I think, the same way. I don't think that means that we shouldn't have ambition or we shouldn't have drive or we shouldn't have vision for going, I see this. And there has to be some sort of I'd probably call it like a holy dissatisfaction. That's probably the language I would land on. That. Of where I'm at today, of going, I'm dissatisfied with what's around me, but I have a contentment. It's not just semantics to me because I think it's a heart posture. I think it's a language of what's coming out of my mouth. But leaders definitely have vision. Even what you just said, it's like I envision that one day people are coming from the east, the west, the north, and south to Johnson City. And although there might not ever be a Ritz-Carlton or whatever the thing is that's attracted people, there is this church called Calvary Church, and people will come. There is a level there that goes, I have vision. There's a gap between where I am and that vision, but I'm content that I'm not quitting here today because it hasn't happened yet. I'm not leaving or cursing the place. I'm going to stand here and build. I'm going to see it come to pass.
There's a difference between settling and contentment.
Good.
And I think there are a lot of people that they call settling contentment.
Very
but
good.
I want to make sure that I'm content because I want to be like the apostle. I want to be happy in every season of life. I want to be able to say I've got the peace of God in every season of life, but I also want to look at my life and go, hey, you're settling right now. This isn't contentment. You're making excuses. I remember somebody said one time, they said there's two types of people. There are people that work and there are people that complain. The people that work get what they want, and the people that complain lose what they want or lose what they have. And I don't want to lose my opportunities. And I think that's the thing that you have to realize too. Even when you're in a small setting, God is still opening up big doors. And I think that if I were to be insecure because of where I'm from or the size of where I'm at, I think it would keep me from accepting opportunity. Like, this is the first podcast I've ever done, but I'm not on just any podcast. I'm on Mature Me with Rich Wilkerson Jr. and Dakota, so it's like, I see what God is doing and I want to say yes, because I think the more I say yes to these types of things, then God is just going to shine that light back on what he's building in Johnson City. And I think something special is going on there that's going to be heard around the world.
I think it starts with gratitude. Like you're saying, like the first step in that whole journey was you believing that God had called you. Obedience, number one. Maybe I want to go to Atlanta. Maybe I want to go to Charlotte. Well, God's called me here. You decided to walk in obedience. Walking fully in that authority, but then having a gratitude for the people that you're leading. Have a gratitude. I think that is such a foundation for growth.
Absolutely.
And I love what you're saying. Contentment is not settling. That is such a word. And something that hit me that I was reading the other day is that it said you can be content while still contending.
I like that a lot.
And that thought process is you can be moving for more while being content with where you are.
Absolutely.
Where I am is where I'm happy to be, but I'm also wanting to move to the next spot tomorrow. I can still be content with today.
Very good.
But I love that. Contentment is not settling.
Can anything good come out of Nazareth? The answer is yes, Nathaniel. And you will see very, very soon that the answer is undoubtedly yes. Can anything good come out of Johnson City? The answer is yes, my friends. And we can go down the list of things, out of a prison cell in Rome, I believe, came the book of Romans.
There you go.
Out of an island of exile in Patmos came the book of Revelation. We could go on and on and on. And I think a big truth that people need to learn in the journey of becoming is that small things, things that appear to be insignificant, criticized things, can come great things, can come amazing things. The area of your life that really has amazed me, that I have been so grateful that I've got to have a friendship with you. I love the ministry coming out of your life, no doubt about it. I was just saying it, and I'm going to say it again for anyone who's watching. Like, one of my most favorite preachers I've heard this past year is Robbie Hilton, to the point that I've written you multiple times on a subject matter and said, hey, you got any thoughts on this? And You're always very, very gracious to lend me content. And in our world, that's like dealing drugs, bro. That's like, bro, wow, okay. What do I got to pay for this? Like, no, man, this one's on the house. But once you get that supply, you know where to go back to it. So anyways, but I think the thing that I've been most attracted to is just watching your marriage, that you're a family man, you're a father. Dakota and I are both young fathers. You just became a granddad. I don't know how you do that, 45? So cool. Well, Rich, I'll tell you how you do it.
There's a way.
But, maybe just give us a little bit about your father of 4.
Yeah.
Married for how long? Maybe just give us a little about your family, because I got some questions about some of that.
Yeah, father of 4, Chloe is 24, Judah is 22, Aaliyah is 20, Oliver is 12. So a little 8-year gap there. Yep. And he's been amazing because all of the, Little League, all that stuff we thought we were done with, we're doing it all over again. We're doing junior high, math all over again. It's fun. Monica, who is their mother and the reason why everything works. We've been together for 26 years. We met when we were 8 years old in a youth camp that my father was preaching at. Only real serious girlfriend I've ever had in my life. And I don't know, man, I'm extremely blessed.
It's beautiful. Maybe talk to us for a moment, like just on fathering.
Yeah.
Like recently, I guess this past year was our first time we ever had at our church, like a men's night. And not because we haven't ever had a heart for men, but just because I think when you're planting a church, I'm saying you need to do so things in the right time. We were talking earlier about like the place and the people and contentment and gifting, and the gifting is the people. I just love that little idea that it's like with God, it's like the right place, the right people at the right time.
There you go.
So a lot of ministry even feels that way for me. It's like I can have a good idea, but I'm waiting for it to become a God idea. I've always had a heart for men, but I felt like there were certain things that we needed to get done in our church before I was trying to lead men or say something specific.
Yeah.
So this past year is really kind of coming around to that, where I'm like, I really feel a new charge, a new excitement, more vision to speak towards, I think, a lot of the crisis that men are dealing with. And I think becoming a dad felt like it gave me some more credibility or authority, at least a burden for that. Like sometimes you don't know how much of a need it is until you experience it yourself. But maybe just like talk to us about, fathering from your perspective, any kind of thoughts of this is how I've thought about it, how your dad did it. Because I think that will open up some conversation that I think that people need to hear today.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. Someone was asking me about one of my kids, my son Judah. He's a really kind person, and so someone was asking me about how did you raise such a kind young man, and he's not a weak man. He's a strong man, but he's just super kind. And so I thought about that for a couple of days, and I think the language I put to it was like I think what I've tried to do as a father is leverage love and not fear. And I think the thing that has helped is that my kids have not lived under threat of punishment, but under like the hope of discipline. And so I don't think my kids have ever felt, so 1 John 4 tells us that perfect love casts out all fear. What fear specifically? It's the fear of punishment, because punishment is final, it's fruitless, but discipline develops fruit. And so I've always tried to walk that line between being an authoritarian and a loving father, because I think you can almost feel like in order to take control, sometimes you have to take authority. And I've been telling guys recently, like, if you have to constantly keep declaring that I'm your dad, I'm the man of this house, I'm the decision, I'm the head of this house, you probably aren't. And so that's the thing that's been really important for me, is to stress right now, like the level of authority that you have in your children's life or in the wife of your life is all about the level of sacrifice you're willing to commit to the relationship. So Jesus tells us that, wives, submit to your husbands, and husbands, love your wife as Christ loves the church and gave himself for it. So his level of authority in our life is determined by his level of sacrifice. So like, I really don't have authority unless I'm willing to sacrifice to the level that I want authority. And so I've been trying to show my kids the way of love and lead that way. Because my kids aren't perfect. They're a mess just like everybody else's kids. They're incredible kids. They're excellent children, but they're not perfect kids. I think they just have been loved so well, they know that it's okay to come home when they make mistakes. And so that's where I've been. I think that's like, if you were asking like, what's your philosophy of parenting, is like, I want to leverage love, because I don't want them to feel threatened by me. I want them to feel loved by me, so that whatever they do, wherever they go, they always feel like, okay, Dad's house is way better than this, right?
Very good.
Dakota and I both were raised, I think, by incredible fathers. Both have good relationships with our dads, and it's only as I hit 40, and probably I speak for him, probably as he hits 30, like what a gift that is.
Yeah.
You ever see that like quote? I don't know if it was like a meme back in the day, like a couple of years ago, like religion says when I mess up, oh, I messed up, don't tell Dad.
Yeah.
But relationship says, oh, I messed
Call
up,
Dad.
I got to call Dad.
Yeah, I love that.
Like in so many ways, that's like such a beautiful like picture. Like we're going to mess up.
Yeah.
I know exactly where I'm going when I do. All of this, the idea is we start talking about like fathering, being a son. I think it comes down to some of these like ideas like about being a man.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I just look at the landscape, and I'm not a sociologist. I want to be careful. I think a lot of pastors do a lot of cultural commentary. It's like, bro,
Right.
you know, you live in Awe City and you hang out with a community of people. Like, I'm not a sociologist. I don't know the landscape of everything, but it does feel like, from the things I see on social media to the world that I look at today, to just the guys that I interact with, when I read the stats, you know, guys failing to get married, they're getting married later, a lot of them not staying married, leaving the workforce. It feels like there's a massive failure to launch when it comes to being a man. To the point that, like, I would say it seems like there is a crisis of manhood, at least in America today. What would you say about some of that today? Would you agree with any of that kind of assessment?
Yeah, I agree with that, because I don't think we are trained well enough to expect opposition. So like one of the things that I especially with my boys, and even my daughters, because I think in some ways the opposition a woman faces in this world is unique and even can be more difficult at times. But with my boys, I've really trained them to expect a fight in life. Judges 3 is a really interesting story. The Bible says that God actually left enemies and let them surround the people of God to train those who had not experienced the wars of Canaan, to train them how to war. And so you almost have to, as you're fathering, you almost have to set up spaces and places for your kids to have to fight for themselves. You can't always fight for them. And the tendency as a father, and I think in some good ways, there's some stuff about our generation, the people that are coming up, that we've unlearned some of the toxic nature of other parenting, philosophies.
Right.
But I think we've kind of swung the pendulum, like we always do in American culture, way too far to the other direction, where it's like, no, they can't, no opposition, no struggle, no trouble. I'm going to fix everything for them. And unless they learn how to problem solve, as 5 and 6 year olds, I don't want to be that dad that comes in and sees some kid taking a toy from my kid and yells at the kid taking a toy from my kid. I'm like, figure it out, dude. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be that guy.
Well, I taught on the other day about like helicopter parents that like hover.
Yes.
And then I went to a small group, we call them crews because that's a cooler name, in Miami. And all the moms were like, oh, it's not helicoptering parenting. It's called snow plowing.
Oh,
that you just plow the way that people can that there's no opposition in front of them.
Yeah.
And you just said something that just like sparked something. I think it's in Exodus. We were reading on Wilderness Week. I think I walked through Exodus. And there's that portion as they cross the Red Sea, I believe, if I'm getting this right, where God has them go a longer way because there was going to be battles. And God said, if they go into this battle right now, they're going to go right back to Egypt because they're not ready.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's because they weren't living as sons. Ooh, I'm getting it right now.
Go for it.
In Egypt. They were living as slaves.
Yeah.
There you go.
And as living as slaves, they never developed a resiliency to that type of opposition.
Yes.
Yeah.
They were conditioned to obey as soon as the whip hit their back.
Yeah.
And so many of us, if we don't raise up godly sons and godly daughters, which is training them how to fight,
Right.
not just to submit, but training them how to fight and how to stand up.
Yes.
When they do face opposition, they're going to go right back to the place of codependency. They're going to go right back to the place of abuse, the place of toxicity.
Yeah.
It's a powerful, powerful word that I want to make sure that I'm raising kids that no opposition. The challenge that I think I'm having right now is that last night we went to the tennis, and we have some friends that are very, very successful that have worked very hard to get there. But I was with my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and we're in unbelievable seats for the tennis match.
Yeah.
that took me 40 years to even sit in. By the way, I didn't even create the path to sit in them. I just know the guy who did it. But now my little boy, who's 6 years old, he's sitting there in this really great seat, eating his Dippin' Dots, like staying up way past his. I never stayed up past my bedtime, until I was out of the house. Like my parents ran a tight ship. It's funny because it's like sometimes the blessing that I'm stepping into in my 40s, I can almost spoil my child now who's 6, and that tension line. Do you feel that tension at all, Dakota? Like
100%. We were having this conversation about some professional athletes that came from nothing. Like I think that we may have been talking about it on another podcast, but I think it was Kyrie Irving or one of these guys who's so good at doing unconventional layups.
Yeah.
The reason he's so good is because there was a goal that had a piece of glass missing on the backboard that he grew up with. So in order for him to make a layup, he had to learn how to spin the ball, and now he translates that to high school, and he's making shots that no one's really ever been able to make.
No.
Why? Because of a restriction.
Yeah.
Because of something that he didn't have.
Yeah.
What I find interesting now is Kyrie Irving's son not only will have a backboard with a piece of glass on it, he could have 1,000 basketball goals in his backyard. How does a professional athlete, how do we as Christian fathers, even though our kids have blessing, still create discipline, still create opportunities for growth? And I think that doesn't have to be something that they just miss out on. I just think that it has to come from intentionality as leaders and as fathers.
Yeah.
To go, how can I put my son, how can I put my daughter in positions, not to push out everything in front of them, but to let them fight certain battles. And there's also, let's be very clear, even though Wyatt's in those seats, he also has a seat to things that will help him grow that you didn't have.
Absolutely. That's a great take. Yeah.
So there's another blessing that he's having. And then if we can fill the gap and let him fight here, I think that's great. I think for me, whenever you start talking about parenthood already, and you guys can tell me more, I have a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a 14-week-old. I can already tell, even though my second's just 1, that she's the opposite of my first. You know what I mean? Like she's completely different. And when you start talking about, the Israelites crossing the Red Sea and going, hey, like, I'm not going to let them fight that battle. They're not ready. They were ready for something. They weren't fighters, but they were builders. That's what slavery had taught them, how to build a civilization. And so now when they're going and they're going to settle somewhere, if they need to build something,
very good,
they're ready and skilled to do that. And I think they
put that tabernacle together pretty quick. Rich, chill out. Yeah.
I think as a father, that's what I'm trying to figure out is going.
Yeah.
There's going to be certain battles that I have to go. It's not a one size fits all in parenting. I'm already saying.
Well, I think what you're nailing, and this is what I want to ask you about, is that I think fathering is leadership.
Yes.
And every leader ought to know that you don't lead everyone the same way. Like I always try to talk to our staff, like, it's not favoritism around here. It's going that, but it's not fairness by any means. There's a value system, and there's going to be different things for different people at different times based upon where you're at and what you need. I think that's called good parenting.
There you go.
And I think what we're talking about is how are we designing challenges, problem solving, how are we building in resiliency into the next generation, specifically into our boys that we're expecting to raise into godly men? Have you heard that quote before? This is good. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. And weak men create hard times.
Wow. Yeah.
And so there is this pattern that we see over and over again.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an algorithm, and I don't know if there's a formula that we can ultimately put upon our child. I think that we have to go back to God's word.
There you go.
And I think that you're saying some things that are really, really beautiful. Maybe just for a moment talk about areas that you do try to create some resiliency in your boys, but maybe even talk about some of the areas that made you resilient.
Yeah.
Man. We were talking earlier about sports, and my senior year of high school, I fully expected to play a lot of minutes, was really excited about the season. head coach gets fired in the off season, new coach comes in, don't have the best relationship with that coach, almost get cut. Year before I'm thinking I'm going to be one of the highlighted players on the team, and now it's like, do I even make this team? And there was an opportunity for me to quit. The coach actually came to me and he said, if I make cuts today, you're not on this team. And I just kept coming and showing up. Whole year, I think I probably played, my senior year of high school, I think I probably played a total of 30 minutes the whole year. And I sat on that bench, and for those 30-some games, God did something in me that I had no idea was going to be necessary to what I'm doing now. And because I thought, all my dreams are falling apart, everything I ever wanted to do with my life, this is killing my dreams. Didn't actually kill my dreams. I got out of high school. I knew some people. They arranged some stuff. I got some tryouts and actually got offers. But it was like at that point in time, it was like God was pointing in a different direction. And so when I faced like being overlooked or feeling like, if I was just here and people would see, if I would just get that opportunity, I didn't wrestle with that kind of stuff. I realized like, okay, God has something for me, and I'm going to sit here and I'm going to sit quietly and patiently, but I'm still going to put in the same level of work. I'm still going to act like I'm starting. I'm still going to act like I know I can play this game. And then when the time is right, God's going to open that up for me. And I think there's a difference. I think you have to teach kids the difference between resistance and rejection. It's so many things happen in the Bible because, like with Jesus' life, so many happens in the Bible. We go, and this happened so that prophecy could be fulfilled. So like when they go to the inn and there's no room in the inn, if you look at that the wrong way, you're like, oh, they rejected Jesus. And it's like, no, it was so that prophecy could be fulfilled. And so I've taught my kids, like, this is one of the things in our house is like, you're exceptional. And what that means is in order to get the word exceptional, you have to have the word accept. So everybody's going to do this except you. Everybody's going to get this except you.
Great.
Everybody's got this social media thing except you. And they would come to me, Dad, everybody gets to go to the party except me. Dad, everybody gets to go to this event except me. Everybody gets to have this on their phone except me. And I'm like, that's because you are exceptional.
You better preach.
So we're raising exceptional kids. Again, they're not perfect. They're exceptional. They in order for the prophetic word, the thing that God has for their life, to come to pass, you have to create exceptions. And if you're not careful, what's rules and what you use that beautiful word of restriction looks like rejection. It looks like disappointment. It looks like failure, but it's not. It's just it's direction. It's pointing you in the right direction. It's like your kids are born with all this energy, all this potential, but somebody has to harness it. Somebody has to direct it, and that's our role. And they're all, like he said, they're different. All four of them are like extremely different. And so you gotta go to God every day and be like, I need a strategy for this kid, because if you're trying to get it from books, and I read books and I listen to podcasts and I try to get all the help I can, but at the end of the day, I got to go to God and be like, God, I need a strategy for Aaliyah today because she's different than Chloe. I need you to help me with Oliver because what he's facing as a 12-year-old is completely different than what Judah was facing 10 years ago.
It's really
different
good.
world. Yeah.
I just turned 40. Dakota just turned 30. And a big reason why we even kind of began having these conversations is just this whole concept that, like, in transitions, and I think it's just easy to say, I mean, every year is a transition with your come around your birthday, but I think these like decades, we kind of make more out of the moment, or we at least notice it more in the moment. And I'm always looking for truth in the transition.
Yeah.
As I'm hitting 40, it's this midlife moment, and we know that all sorts of people have midlife crisis. We probably have friends that have had midlife crisis. You probably know people in your community, in your church. And I think as I step into this new decade, I can look like all around and I can see like the references that I once had or the heroes that I once had. Some have fallen, some have pivoted, some have changed. It's just kind of an interesting moment in life. Henry David Thoreau, the American philosopher, it's a quote that's always stuck with me. He said it this way, that the mass of men live quiet lives of desperation. And
Beautiful.
To me, when I hear that, it's almost like this silent anger.
Yeah.
It's almost like this quiet quit. It's almost like this, was it Langston Hughes who has that poem, A Dream Deferred? It's like, I thought my life was going to be this, and now it's that, and I'm just kind of going through the motions. I think when I like put it that way and think that way, it's like really scary, Like, I don't want to live a quiet life of desperation. I don't want to go through the motions. I don't want to go through life like doing this stuff, but on the inside, man, I quit. I lost my passion. I lost my fire. I lost my zeal.
Great.
I lost my conviction. I lost the purpose. Twofold. Have you ever felt that? How have you been able to counter that? Maybe a better way to say is, do you ever feel that?
Yeah.
But can you maybe speak to that?
Yeah, I think that's so true. Because you have, expectation, and then you have reality, and probably somewhere in the middle there is that dissatisfaction. That's kind of where it lives and breathes and moves, And I felt that big time. I was in my 30s and had made some dumb, just financial decisions growing up. Just like, we were living in a trailer at one point in our life and had a car that cost more than my trailer. It's just being silly and not smart. And I was in my 30s and some friends were doing something, getting houses or whatever, and kind of their lives were moving forward. And I was just like stuck. And I was kind of faced in that moment. Am I going to get complacent? Because I think complacency is when you quit without leaving. Like I wasn't going to run off on my family. I wasn't going to leave my kids. I wasn't going to stop showing up, but I just wasn't going to be there when I showed up. I just stopped being present. And God really had to get a hold of me. I had to forgive myself for not meeting the expectations that I had for myself. Because I think that's where so much of it is I think most of us, we expect something of ourselves.
100%.
We want to succeed. We want to thrive. And then when we don't, we get disappointed. And then we allow so much shame to just overtake us. And so I was in a level of shame. I got the heaviest I'd ever been in my life. I was depressed and wanted to quit everything. And then God was like, I love you. I want you to come home. I've got something great for you. It might not be what you expected. It's going to be better than what you expected. But I had to leave that place. So yeah, dissatisfaction is a big part of my story. Just feeling like I just hadn't met the expectations that I had for myself. Not even my father or anything. Like my dad never did that to me. He never made me feel that way. I did that to me.
Was there someone you walked through that process with?
Yeah, I mean, Monica she's obviously been for me, she's been so understanding. I've been able to tell her how I feel. A lot of guys don't have that. And I've got a great brother. I've got a great dad. And so I have a great system around me of people that I can really be honest with and just say, hey, like, I'm done. I'm toasted. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to actually try. I mean, just silly stuff. Like I was thinking, I loved golf, and I'm having these like, maybe I should just really grind at golf for a year and try to get on some tour. And, like I was so done with everything and trying to figure, like it was escapism, but it was like, I didn't want to leave my wife. I didn't want to do any of that. I just wanted to leave my life. Like I wanted to leave my career kind of stuff. And because I just felt so much shame because I didn't accomplish what I thought I should accomplish. And so, yeah, my brother has been a big help. My brother, during that time, I had no idea, was battling a prescription drug addiction. And for years, he's clean now for, 7-8 years now. And God really transformed his life. So our whole church, our whole ministry is a recovery ministry. It's like people like me who struggled with depression in their 30s and or at some point in their life, or people who've struggled with addiction. That's been our ministry. That's been how God has really used us. And so there's hope out there for people who are feeling that way, but I think you have to forgive you. It's one thing to know that God forgives you. I heard somebody say, I think Darius Daniels said this, he's so stinking brilliant. He said, it's one thing for God to feel a certain way about you, but if you don't believe what he believes about you, it doesn't matter. Yep. So he could be like, I love you all day long, but if you don't love you, it's not going to matter.
There you go. And
so I had to start thinking about myself the way God thinks about me. And that really lifted me up out of that dissatisfaction and put me in a different place.
100% of the time, people behave to what they believe.
Great.
And people can try to tear that apart.
Yeah.
because it's like, no, I believe in God. Well, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
Well, I believe I'm forgiven, but sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
And I always believe that right living comes from right believing.
Yes.
Which is why I don't want to go down the theological framework, but Paul is reminding over and over of the gospel. Let me remind you. Don't we know the gospel already? No, you forgot it.
Yeah.
You forgot it since last Sunday, and that's why we're going to come here. Preacher, what are you going to tell me today? Nothing you haven't heard before, but everything you forgot this week.
Yeah.
And I forgot it too.
There you go.
So let me remind myself. You're speaking about something, and I'm always looking on this journey of manhood. And I don't know if today's podcast is the journey of manhood, but we're kind of in some of that stuff. I know there's a lot of ladies that listen as well, but we could call it the journey of maturing, the journey of becoming. We're always growing.
Yep.
And I've learned that new seasons require new strategies. It's not just cliche. It's just really true. This morning, I sat in my cold plunge, and I hadn't been in the cold plunge in about 4 weeks. And it was funny. After not being in that thing for 4 weeks, I was like, I can't do this.
It hurt.
Get me out. Ah! I was like freaking out. And I have enough tools from the past to go, dude, you're going to go the 3 minutes. Like, stop it.
Yeah.
Because I've actually learned my journey of where I'm at today is that I need to start my day with small wins.
Yeah.
None of you have asked me today, did you complete your 3 minutes in the cold plunge?
Right.
I'm not a legalist, but sometimes I am.
Right.
But me getting 3 minutes done this morning without anyone knowing it was a small win that set up the rest of the day for me. And what I want to say out of some of the things you're talking about, and maybe you can weigh in on this if you disagree or agree, I think it's sometimes it's easier for like both of you guys for me to quickly relate because I know some of the feelings from the career that we're in. We're not supposed to say that it's a calling, but like the line of work that we're in. But I imagine it's the same in so many different spaces too. And what I want to say, especially to men that feel dissatisfied, men that feel maybe insecure with where they're at, a lot of times that dissatisfaction and that insecurity is being produced from not defining a healthy scoreboard.
Yes.
Sometimes we don't even know we have a scoreboard. Sometimes we act like we're not keeping score.
Yeah.
But many times it's just the place that I'm going to that scoreboard. I'm never going to win. I'm never going to find like that's why I'm starting with the cold plunge thing. It's just going like, ain't nobody here know I was in the cold plunge. No one here is even impressed. Like, wow. Like no one's watching back like, wow, he did that.
Yeah.
It's impressive to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that you've got to find out where you go into your scoreboard. I was talking to, sorry, I'm so long-winded. I'm going to get back to you, but
No,
like
go for it.
I was talking to a young preacher not too long ago, and it's an interesting moment that he finds himself in because he's learning how to preach and he's getting up on the stage, and it's a weird thing when you preach, especially in a community, because a lot of his job has nothing to do with preaching. However, the times that he preaches is when he gets the most public response. But I would venture to say that he did 10 things that week that were much more important and much more significant towards his job and towards his career and towards the community, but nobody ever celebrated it. And what gets celebrated is what gets repeated. So it leaves him, after he gets done preaching, when he does get the response, go, wow, I should be doing more of that, or that's the only thing I'm good at. Or at times when he's not getting the response when he's preaching, going, it hits him even harder. Like, and he compares, and it's like, bro, like, you're going to have to find a different scoreboard. People are fickle. We just had Palm Sunday not too long ago. I just look at that story always and go, bro, you better get your scoreboard right. Jesus knew it.
So
Jesus,
true,
like,
man.
Jesus came in there going, Hosanna. They're fulfilling the prophecy.
Yeah.
Wow, look at this. You're the hero. You're the king. And it's like, bro, y'all about to kill me in 5 days.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if I'm living for the applause of man, if I'm living for a resume, if I'm living for some sort of an accomplishment or an accolade, careful, because some of that stuff is empty wins. It's you get there and then it's not enough. And my last thing is, like, I just think for a long time for me in church, it was always like, how many people were in church? I would never say that. I'm way too smart and spiritual to say that, but I felt that a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
How many people do we have on Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, man, because I've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And I can go back to the days that if we could break 200,
Right.
Don Cherie,
Look at
if
that.
there was 200 people there, then I'd be happy. If there's 500, if 500 people came to my gathering
Yeah.
for God, then I'd be satisfied. If we ever broke at that, go on. I've had all sorts of new goals, and I've gotten to every one of those places and still found myself
Yeah.
dissatisfied.
Yeah.
And all I'm trying to say is, it's like you got to get a better scoreboard. You got to define that stuff. And so I'm not
Yeah.
trying to be like broad and loosey-goosey. I'm trying to land on something for somebody that many of you, you're dissatisfied today because you don't know what the win is and you don't know what the loss is. And could we at least take some time to try to define what that thing is?
Well, we've talked about this a lot, that success in the kingdom is faithfulness. But I think what you're saying is so important, because faithful to do what? Like,
There you go.
I heard somebody say, they said the reason you set the temperature in your house is because once the unit reaches that desired temperature, it knows when to shut off.
Bingo.
And if you don't ever set the temperature, if you don't ever determine what the winds are for your life, then you don't know when to shut it down. And you'll just keep doing stuff, and you'll spend the rest of your life perfecting stuff God never asked you to do, working on things God never asked you to work on. So I think it's not just about
feeling bad
like,
with things that didn't work out, that you were never supposed to be,
Exactly. Things you weren't ever supposed to do. And you're like, why am I not good at this? Why don't I have a podcast? Well, maybe you're just supposed to go on them. Maybe you're not supposed to do that. And you can spend so much energy trying to do stuff because you're trying to keep up, because you think that's what success looks like. That's why a relationship with God is so important. You have to know not just when God is telling you yes, but when God is telling you no. So like in the New Testament, the book of Acts, the apostle, he tries to go into a certain community to preach the gospel. And the Bible says the Spirit of Jesus said no. It's like he wanted to go into Asia and preach the gospel. That sounds like a good thing to me. Like, Lord, don't you want everybody to hear the message of the gospel? He's like, no, I don't want you to go there. And then he tried to go to another community. The Spirit of the Lord again goes, no. It's like, so you have to, before you can know the yeses of God, I think very often you have to learn the no's of God, right? So when he says no to you, you're able to let God say no to you. And then when he says no to him, he finds himself in a crazy situation. He finds himself in a community where he goes, and that's where he meets Lydia, and she would become a major player in his ministry. That's where he met that woman who was following him around town, and she was like, these are men of God, sent by God to declare the word of God. And he like recognizes there's an evil spirit in her, and he rebukes her. So like when you're able to say no to when you're able to say yes to God's no's, it puts you in the right positions, and you end up meeting the right people.
Yep.
And I tell people all the time, it's like, I think you have to determine not just like what's the number, because I'm thinking about that right now. I'm 45. I'm starting to think like, okay, what's the number money wise? Like I need to retire, to really be set for life. And so I think more than just the number, it's like, no, what kind of fulfillment do I want?
There you go.
Because the number never fulfills. It's like, is it 500? Is it, is it 1,000? Is it 10,000? And, we're hitting all of those numbers, but there's still that lack that you felt and I felt in those same situations. But what kind of fulfillment am I looking for? I think the fulfillment we are looking for is knowing that we are obeying God.
There you go. That's it.
Like if all I do for the rest of my life is just do what God tells me to do,
Yes.
then I'm good. But I think where we lose it is we start to add to the things that God tells us to do, stuff that he never told us to do. And you don't have the grace for that. You don't have the energy for that. You don't have time for that. And so no wonder you live dissatisfied or depressed, because you've done stuff, you've put stuff on yourself God never asked of you.
So good. Like success and obedience are not synonymous, especially in the kingdom. It's like just because you go do that, have success, or maybe you're not having success in this season, doesn't mean that you're not being obedient.
Right.
You got to define what success is. Maybe success was just stepping into that role.
Yeah.
So good.
It's awesome.
I think success maybe should be defined as obedience.
There
The
you
question
go.
Is
Yeah.
we don't know.
There you go.
Yeah,
We haven't defined what God's called us to do. We
That's
think
better.
Totally.
We think the success is looking like that guy. And we could go all the competition and the comparison, I think, is where we just get so lost, because Dakota's good at that and he's doing that.
Yeah.
I should be doing that.
Yeah. And men we are champions at that. But I heard somebody say, they said, I don't want to make a difference. I want to make my difference. And that's a completely different thing between making a difference and making my difference. Like Paul could have gone into those towns, and he's so gifted. He could have preached the gospel. If anybody could have gone and made a difference, it was Paul. But it was like, you're going to get there, but you're not going to get there spoken word. You're going to get there by letter. You're going to eventually get to Asia, Paul. But if you'll trust God, you'll make a bigger impact than you would have doing your own thing. And so I think that's been the key for me, is just like honoring the things that God has told me to do, giving my best to that stuff.
I'm always drawn to those stories, like in the New Testament, where the disciples, like the leaders, like the guys that know Jesus, they come and find Jesus and he's all alone in some places. Like, Jesus, like, don't you know, bro? Like, the crowd's over, they're waiting for you. Jesus is like, I'm not going. I'm not called to that moment. Like, and I always just, once again, we liken things to where we're at. It's like, there's another building, there's another service, they're waiting for you. You need to go. And it's like, just because there's a demand.
Yeah. Well, his brothers were doing that to him, right? They were like, hey, you need to get out there, man. You got this miracle thing going on. Get out there and show people what you got if you really want to be accepted. And he's like, no, I'm good here.
I'm good, bro. I'm good.
Is there someone on your journey when you said, I want to make my difference, or you liked that someone said that, is there someone that helped you find, hey, this is who Robbie is as a pastor? This is who Robbie is as a leader? Or what were some of the key experiences or moments that helped you find your rhythm, your pace, your grace?
I have an incredible dad, so I've always felt like I've always had a really good sense of you can do whatever you decide to do. Like, my dad was the type of guy who was always like, hey, you should leave this church. This is too small for you. I feel like God's, he was always trying to push me out, but in a good way, not try to get rid of me, but just like not ever wanting to limit me. So I felt that. But I also have a mentor, Courtney McBath, who pastors a church in Virginia Beach, Calvary Revival Church. He's about to transition to our friend David. And he's been a true mentor in the sense of someone who saw stuff in me when I was really young. He came to me, I was a teenager, and he said, he watched me, he came over to our house, and I was in my backyard, and I was just throwing a baseball up in the air to myself and catching it. And he came to me when I was maybe 13 or 14 years old. And he said, the first time I met you when you were doing that in the backyard, he was like, I just had this sense come over me that God has called you to do something different than that. And it took me a while to accept that, because that's all I wanted. But he's always spoken to me about, there's a ministry call in your life. When I was growing up, my brother's incredibly talented. So it's just natural for the prophets to kind of like hone in on my brother and be like, you're going to the nations, you're going to stand before thousands.
By the way, for another day.
Funny topic.
And he's incredibly good, and he's done all that stuff. He's incredible. But they would just find him, and I'm just like hiding in a corner and never got any words, never was like. So I just assumed, but he kept on me. Courtney was just like, I feel like there's ministry, and I feel like there's a call of God on your life to preach. And so he helped me see that, man. It was nothing I ever saw, nothing I wanted to do. I was kind of running from church. My parents had planted a church, and so I was a hurt church kid, wanting to do anything else but ministry, but God had a different plan.
I think the world moves so fast that we live in right now. I mean, like, it's so fast that I think one of the biggest things in my life is having godly counsel. And that sounds very, very strong. It's good friends that are going to remind you of what you forget. I think because I move fast, because the world moves fast, I'm prone to forget. Faith suffers when you forget. That is the age-old story of the Israelites. It's like, bro, you forgot about God again? These guys are crazy. Well, it's only crazy when you're looking at it from the outside in. We do it
every day.
Every day. Yeah, I'm just as stupid as they were. Like, God's been so faithful to me time and time again. And so many things that I think when it comes down to it, like, we know these things, but we need to repeat them to each other. We need to rehearse these promises. We need to recite these promises. And when I say the words like godly counsel, I think it's just conversations like we're having right now, where it's like you walk away and you get daily bread. And it's like, you're going to have to get some more bread tomorrow. That's why I think things like podcasts and stuff like that, it's like people go, it's just content. I'm like, I know what you mean, but like, I actually think there's more than just content going forth. I think it's daily bread in the fast world that we live in, and we need to get it bite-sized. We need to get it in long format. We need to get God's word into our heart, because that's the truth that sustains us. And there's some lessons that I've learned a few years ago, and I just forgot them.
Right.
Well, as I hear it, it's like, okay, it refreshes me and it recalibrates me. It's that idea of like taking your car in. Your car has to get a tune-up. Your car, the tires, you have to realign the wheels.
Yep.
If you don't realign the wheels, you might not see it going slow, but that car will drift. The faster it goes, it drifts even quicker. So like we're the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like I already know the truth that my success is defined by my obedience to God. I get going fast. I start drifting. I start doing things that I'm not called to do, not sinful things, not bad things.
Right.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's taking on things that you shouldn't take on. Of course I know that I got to learn to say no. Like no is a powerful, powerful tool because it helps you get realigned and it helps you control the things that you're called to control and helps you not focus on the things that you can't control.
Yeah.
Where does fear, anxiety, and worry come in? When I'm out here in this zone of things that are outside of my control, trying to control them.
Yeah.
Jesus shows up in the storm. Take courage. It is I. He doesn't say, take control. It is you.
control.
Like, that doesn't make any sense. I can't control a storm.
There you go.
I can control my spirit in the storm.
Yeah.
I can control where my gaze goes in the storm.
Yeah.
I can control where my attention goes in the storm. I can control where my awe belongs.
Yes.
My awe belongs in the one who's stronger than, the one who says, be still, and the storm silences. I love that passage. I think is it Mark 5, where scripture says that they were afraid in the storm, and then Jesus says, be still. And then the water says it's completely calm. And the phrase says the disciples were terrified. Afraid in the storm, terrified in the calm. Why? Oh, because they met the storm's match.
Yes.
I just want to know who controls the storm, even when I'm in it.
Yep.
So we know these things. I just think we get going fast. And so
No, it's
my greatest
wonderful.
practical tool is like these conversations.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
I'm walking away talking to you going, I feel a little recalibrated today. I feel a little bit, a little tune-up taking place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I think with wise counsel, I do like what you're saying. It's like it's good friends. However, I think having a front seat to your life, different leaders that I've had in my life, they all have good friends, but they also have wise counsel, like a leader.
Yeah.
One of my dad's mentors, I was talking to him about it a few months ago, and he was like, yeah, you know what our relationship was? Our relationship was him talking and me listening. And I think if we're going to talk about manhood, I think sometimes we like to be in relationships that we benefit from, but also we like to feel validated that we can have something to offer. Yeah. And I think sometimes submission and I think sometimes wise counsel are one-sided relationships where you're going like, yeah, I don't think you actually do necessarily care what I have to say about your life. I'm not going to make an investment into your life, but you have experience that I desperately want in mine. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so intriguing, and it challenged me to go like, who am I allowing to talk into my life, even if there is maybe a lack of relationship because of their experience, even if there is like a lack of time spent. They have something. They have an anointing. They have experience. They have a life that I haven't lived that I want to speak into. Would you guys both say that there's been relationships that you've had where it is maybe one-sided, or you've had to open up as a man and submit and go?
All of my mentors, it's one-sided.
Yeah.
What you're speaking to is a whole nother topic that's very, very important.
Yep.
I think we live in this funny world right now where we think mentorship is relationship.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
Mentorship is called me being humble.
Yes.
Me recognizing that there's something that you have.
Yeah.
Me honoring that. Not celebrating, not pointing out your deficiencies or your weaknesses or your faults. Every man has those things.
Correct.
But a wise man, a wise young man, identifies the things on somebody's life despite their weaknesses and their faults and say, I'm going to humble myself and I'm going to open up my ears and I'm going to catch that which you're throwing. The other night we sat, in fact, the four of us sat with someone who I consider a mentor in my life, an older brother, somebody who I think is dynamic and powerful. And I'm in question and answer mode. You know what I mean? Like I'm doing the questioning, he's doing the answering.
Yeah.
I'm doing the seeking, he's doing the processing out loud. I'm not processing out loud in front of him.
Very good.
He's not my therapist. He's a mentor.
Yeah.
So I'm asking questions that I'm curious about. Maybe I'm asking him a question he hasn't thought about. And if it's not a polished, perfect answer, I don't go, oh, that wasn't polished, perfect. I'm looking for the gold within it. My question tonight was, how do you minister like that, man?
Yeah.
How do you, we were talking to Judah Smith, and I'm asking Judah, like, who has this unbelievable gift that one minute he can make you laugh so hard that you're crying. The next minute I'm weeping. But I'm not just weeping. It's not just emotionalism.
Yes.
Some of my deepest moments in a gathering in the presence of God has been under his teaching and preaching. I think I'm a good preacher. Like, I think I'm learning how to do that. But man, this guy is light years with some things that he's unlocked and things that he knows how to do. Whether he even knows how to do it or not, I'm gonna try to take time that night to sit here and go, teach me.
Very good.
So you're saying something. I think it's like, my job is to make the investment into these people.
Yes.
I'm gonna go and try to. I'm not going, can you meet on my schedule?
No way.
I'm walking in with my questions. I'm walking in on their timeline. I'm not disrespecting their time. I'm learning from afar. I'm reaching out. I'm complimenting. I'm encouraging. I'm affirming. Yeah, I think that this is a fun comment we could go into. We should probably do a whole pod on it, because I meet people. It's like, can you mentor me? And it's like, and what they mean is like, can we get lunch every day at 12? And it's like, bro, I got like kids and a wife and I love you, but like, I can mentor you. Like, have you listened to one of our podcasts? Have you read I haven't read any of your books yet, but could you mentor me?
Right.
I don't think you're that interested in me
Put my
mentoring
life
you.
into
You know,
these things.
like,
Right.
I've got, there's 150,000 words out there. That'd be a good start. So I think it's just interesting that you're speaking towards something, which I think it always starts with a posture of humility.
Yeah.
I think manhood's a big posture of humility. Anything that you'd weigh in on that, Robbie? Like,
I think most people want agreement, not a mentor.
There
You
you
know
go.
what I mean? They
There
don't
you
really
go.
want
so you,
somebody to
Titus,
come in their
like,
life.
like calling out poor guys.
Call
and
them
helping
out.
on that. It's on you now.
They don't really want somebody to come in and tell them, what they really think. Funniest story. One of my mentors, a guy named Brian Green, pastors up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I called him probably eight months into taking over the church, and a staff person had left, and I was angry because I'm telling him all this stuff. I'm like, my dad didn't want to bring this guy on. I brought this guy on. I've done this for this guy. I did this for this guy. I opened this door, and he stopped me in my tracks, and he said, "Are you God?"
Yeah.
There you
And
go.
I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not God. He's like, you sound like you think you're God. Wow. And it was at that moment I was like, shut up. Yeah, it's time to be quiet and just listen. And then he took about 20 minutes and he said, "Are you good?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Bye." That was it. That's a mentor.
That's awesome.
Somebody who will tell you from a place of not like a friend correcting you or giving you advice, but somebody, who has felt what you felt, been where you've been, and can speak back to you from a place of like, that's not my thing anymore, but I can help this young guy through this little emotional breakdown.
Yeah,
he's having.
exactly.
Yeah, for
Powerful.
sure. That's
No
a mentor.
doubt.
What's do you have any good moments of like being corrected by your dad or someone?
Yeah, I think so. I was after my first year of school, I went to Abilene Christian to play ball, and I really wanted to go to my dad's alma mater, Louisiana Tech.
Mm-hmm.
My best friend was playing football there. I had talked to the coaching staff there. I was going to have a space there, not a scholarship, but I was going to be able to be on the team and play, and I was excited about that. It's kind of like a place where I kind of wanted to go growing up. And there was an opportunity that opened up at Southeastern. And it was by far the biggest moment of my life that I knew what I was supposed to do and I did not want to do it. It's like everything about that school was the school that I didn't want to go to be honest.
Yeah.
And I love that school.
Yeah, we work
I
with
just,
them now. But
I just didn't want that school for me in that season.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? For what I wanted to play ball.
Yeah.
And that school's really good at a lot of things, and they're getting better at that. You know what I mean? And so for me, they were just they didn't even have a team yet. You want me to go and be a part of the start of the thing? Right. That sounds like hell. You know what I mean? Like, and so that's kind of where I was at. It was nothing against the school. I love the school.
But if my dad was your dad, he'd be like, Dakota, this is going to be awesome. You're going to be part of the beginning.
Verbatim,
Like, what?
verbatim. This is where I was like, oh man, I'm not sure that this is the school for me. But kind of tells you the difference between me and my dad. He was like, this is going to be like youth camp every day. And I was like, I'm out.
I'm not into that.
I'm out, Now I'm like, I love youth camp. Praise God for youth camp. But it just was not where I was at. And my dad had to be, it was the most he had to step in for a decision ever in my life to go like, I really know this is for you. And he was like, do you feel like you're hearing from God on this if you don't do this? That he was going to that extent. Like, why do you feel like you're getting a word not to go here? I remember I finally accepted it, that I was going to go to this school, and we had this dinner. And it was like, when you make a decision, but you're just kind of trying to put it in the back of your mind. We had this dinner, and it was like all about we were about to leave for school. And so it was like, if there's any time that you're going to face this, it's now. And I just looked miserable the whole time. I could not control my emotions. I wasn't emotional or crying, but I had like, my spirit was broken. Like legitimately, I was just like really sad. And my dad pulled me upstairs and he goes, hey, if you're going to have that attitude going to the school, you shouldn't go. And I was like, in my head, I was so mad that I was like, man, I'm really going through it right now. You don't want to be like, hey, are you okay? But it was exactly what I needed to go like, no, this is going to be a great time in your life. And if you go to this school with this poor me mentality, you're not going to get anything out of it. But if you actually change your attitude and see the blessing in it, everything's going to change for you. And that's what happened.
Did you actually change your attitude in that moment, or?
No, it took me a second. It took me thinking about that moment. I was not happy leaving that conversation.
But you were respectful?
Very, always. Yeah, always. Very respectful. And I talked to him a little bit about it, and it wasn't a long conversation, but definitely a respectful conversation, very straightforward conversation on his side and my side. And it took me a little bit, but looking back on that moment now, I think that's the lesson I'm teaching our young leaders in our church. It's like, if you can't be grateful for this season, if you can't be grateful for Johnson City, if you can't be grateful for Miami, you're never going to make a difference. Because you're not going to put your weight down. You're not going to be you. And you can't do anything without a heart of gratitude.
What I love about that story is like twofold. Number one, I love your dad being the greatest dad ever, and probably saying something that like he was probably so secure and confident and humble that he's like, I'm going to give some truth right now that might not even be received all the way, and I'm going to let that hang.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to not do my job of confronting something.
Correct.
But I also love you being a good son, which is like, yo, my man, you are missing out on how I'm feeling right now, and this didn't encourage me in the moment, but I have enough maturity, which is I have enough control over my emotions. You didn't deny emotions. You're able to articulate them right now. This is how I felt. So I don't think you're suppressing something. I just think that there was controlled strength, which is that word meekness. You know, I think my favorite topic when it comes to men today is that meekness is not weakness.
Mm-hmm.
It's bridled strength.
Right.
The idea of bridled strength is where we get that concept of like a horse and putting a bit in their mouth, and a horse has to be broken so it can be ridden by a master.
Yeah.
A horse that's unbroken has no use to a master.
Yep.
I think it's the same thing with men. It's like if we haven't been broken before God, meaning how would I define brokenness? I would define it by going, I'm not getting what I want when I want it.
Yes.
And I'm going to still live in that with a place of contentment.
Mm-hmm.
Your ability to go, yes, sir.
Yeah.
And go down, and then in the aftermath about it, I just think it's a really beautiful picture that of good fathering and also being a really good son that doesn't always you don't get a lot of examples. I think that's a really beautiful example because nothing maybe in the moment felt perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's only like in the aftermath, it's actually like you actually played your part really well.
Yeah.
And he played his part really well.
Mm-hmm.
And look all these years later, how you're able to connect those dots, teach from it. You're not bitter at your dad.
Correct.
But it required both of you probably doing something you didn't want. I know your dad. I don't think he would want to on that day.
No.
Come and
I think that was a hard conversation.
You got it.
And I think that I relate to that so much in leadership right now. Whenever someone is going through a difficult time that you're leading, but they're still doing something that you have to speak correction to, I can rob them of growth and not say it, or I can step in and say it in love. I don't have to. I can say that without breaking them. I can say that in love. But to do it to not do it in the name of love is a lie. And that's what I probably learned from my dad that day. Because he loved me, he was going, hey, I'm going to at least speak to this. It's going to be your responsibility to react. But I'm going to make sure you have to confront the fact that if you go in this spirit, it will not be right. And this is not the way God would have you walk into this next season.
But it's fascinating because you can't control people are going to react.
Correct.
And sometimes they react crazy, so crazy that they'll put you on a cross.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally what they did to Jesus. It's like he did everything, I think, in love, of course, and gave truth.
Still got him.
And I think if I'm talking about leadership right now and being a man, it's one of those things I don't think it's taught much, but like I just get so tired of leading. And part of that is like tired of telling you the truth.
Yeah.
Tired of coaching, tired of confronting, where it's like, you know what? We good. But it's like, that wasn't good. You know, like David D and I were talking the other day about something or someone. And it's like, hey, what'd you think about that? I was like, it's good. He's like, no, what'd you really think about it? I was like, oh, wasn't good enough, you know.
It worked out.
Like it's that fine line of
There you
like
go.
when and we could be here lost forever in
Yeah.
the nuances of when to speak up and when to stick, when to quit on certain
Yeah.
things. What I would say to men out there, it's a dangerous place when anytime somebody is correcting something that you take on the attitude, I'm being hated on, or I have to defend myself or fight back or be right. I don't care how old you are, 45, 40, 30, 55. You need some voice in your life that can correct something,
Yes.
critique something, criticize something, and you don't go and pout about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's funny we're saying this because the other day, and I don't think he would mind me telling me, my dad wrote me a text. My dad wrote me a text. He watched the podcast with me and my friend Nathan Finocchio. And in my opinion, we were kind of being funny and kind of giving some like inside church stuff. And we were joking around sometimes like the world I grew up in, that a preacher would get up maybe and be like, you know what, we're just going to keep singing that song, you know? And I was like, what I've learned now is they weren't prepared, you know?
Yeah.
Which is a funny joke, but it's definitely a generalization, and it's not true all the time.
Yeah, not all the time.
And my dad, who's the best ever, he's like, hey, son, just want to let you know I love you. Grateful for you in this season. I'm proud of all the things you're doing. I listened to the podcast you did with Nathan, and I got to be honest with you, I haven't said this too much in your life. I did not like it. And I was like, oh, man. He's like, my question for you, son, is can the Holy Spirit ever take over a meeting? Ooh. Can the Holy Spirit ever interrupt a preacher? And guess how I responded? Hey, Dad, love you so much. I'm so sorry that didn't sit well with you. I appreciate your feedback. I think we were joking on some parts, but I totally hear what you're saying. And yes, I definitely believe the Holy Spirit can take over sermons, meetings at any time, and I will seek to improve as I'm having conversations.
Yeah.
He writes back, hey, thanks. Hate to meddle into your stuff. And I was like, I just think that's like, I'm 40
perfect.
and he's 70.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. And even if I think
Absolutely.
you're wrong, you're right, my man. You're my dad. And I only got
Exactly.
one. So weigh in,
Yeah.
speak
No
up,
doubt.
and let me not.
You have to consider the motivation too. Like, what's his motivation for doing it? He loves you. And just wants the
Totally,
best for you.
totally.
He's not like,
Hey,
coming
son,
in
don't
to
be an
destroy
idiot
you.
on the
Yeah.
internet. You know, like we've got enough of
That's
those
it.
guys. You were doing so well until you became 40.
That's
And
it.
now you're
Oh,
having
no.
It's all downhill.
Don't
you're
throw
having
it away.
stupid, frivolous
God.
conversations in front of you. What are you thinking? But yes.
No, that's it. That's it. I love it. I love what you're saying too, because I think there is an incredible way to deal with people in the moment that is corrective and loving. I'm always reminded, I've been thinking about this a lot lately in Philippians chapter 2. Paul's writing and he says, Jesus, even though he is God, he did not consider equality
Yes.
with God something to be used to his advantage, but instead he humbled himself and became a servant.
So good.
Right. And so I think
Yes.
I think we can look at humility and be like, well, I'm just going to be quiet. But I think humility is serving.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the best way for me to serve you? So the best way for me to serve you, I'm not going to leverage my authority over you, but I am going to speak into this moment and I'm going to talk, because I think that's the best way for me to serve you. And I think that's what happened to you that day is your dad's like, I think this is the best way for me to serve him,
Yes.
to help him. I'm not trying to come in as his father and be like, at this moment, you're going to do this because your dad said so. It's
Mm-hmm.
more of that. I'm going to serve you right now. And the best way for me to serve you is to correct you.
Yes.
And I think sometimes when we think about serving people, we don't think about correcting them or
Totally.
talking sternly to them. Or I think in the moment we just want to like pat them on the back and be like, it's going to be okay. But I think sometimes it's like, no, I'm not coming in here as like, I don't want to go into any situation and be like, hey, I'm the pastor, I'm the dad, I'm the father, do what I say.
Yep.
I want to serve that situation correctly and say what needs to be said.
Yeah, the other day I was thinking about the quote, if you only tell me you're doing good, then I'll never be great. If you only say good job, then you're robbing me of being great.
Yeah. And that's what men want.
Correct.
They want to be great.
Correct.
That's why we live quietly dissatisfied, because we're not great. And then we settle into good. And then we hate ourselves for settling into good. And they want to be great. And I think that's what is so important about what you're doing with Mature Me and podcasts and the messages and everything that you're talking about, because you are speaking to that part of every person, men and women, who want to be great, but most of culture is telling them, hey, that's good enough. that'll work. And it's like that, but it doesn't
good,
work.
man.
It doesn't fulfill me. It doesn't satisfy me. I know there's something better in me. And that's why I've always loved your preaching. That's why I admire you so much, is because you're always calling us. Don't you feel that? Like you're
Yes,
always calling
always.
us like,
So
hey, there
true.
is better. You don't have to, like, contentment is one thing, but like you can be a better man. You can be a better husband. You don't have to settle for that for the rest of your life. And I love that. I love that challenge of like, I'm going to call out what is in you that most people won't speak to you. And I'm not afraid to hurt your feelings a little bit to get it out of you, because it's there.
Yes.
You can mature. You can
You
grow.
can.
You can become something.
It's possible.
And many times when it comes to growing and maturing, there's going to come these seasons that you're going to be doing something that you didn't want, or it's not in your timing. Could it be possible that a good father who's lived 3 times the length of your life can see some things for your future that you at 18 can't see yet?
Correct.
Could he have seen all of, in the seed format of Dakota, that this man is called to preach? This man loves the Lord. This man is going to have a beautiful family. This man's going to touch the world. And football will play a part of that, but it won't be the totality of that. And you not going there, but going here is going to set up, as you get older in your life, the dreams and the things that God's whispered into your ear that I'm aware as your dad. So let me speak into that. So let me restrict you today to direct you for tomorrow. I was talking to my friend, Carrie Carnes, a.k.a. Carrie Job, name drop, and just about her story the other day. And it's really powerful because we were just talking. I'm like, oh, you were at, I think it was Christ for the Nations or whatever. Then she was at Gateway for many years. She has this song called Revelation song that comes out when people start calling her. And she's like kind of going to these like, hey, can you come do worship? It's like, yeah. It's like kind of structuring a worship night, but didn't really know what that was. But there was a time there at Gateway that she's just serving at that church. And like, she'd like pick up the phone like as a receptionist. And they're like, hey, can we talk? Can you like maybe direct me to that girl that sings that song Revelation song? She's like, that's me. You know, like,
Crazy.
well, she's got this influx of invitation.
Yeah.
And she was just telling me a story of going to talk to Pastor Robert, like, hey, maybe I'm supposed to go out now. And I don't want to mess up all the details nor tell a story that it's hers, but like just the concept of him saying like, hey, it's not right now. And it wasn't that he didn't believe that she should go. It's just that timing wasn't right. But when she got that word at that moment, it was sad to her. And I said to her, well, was that good advice? She goes, oh my goodness. That was definitely the good advice. I was not ready. And had I been let out to that point, I don't know if I'd be here to this degree today. And I was going, good pastoring, good leading.
So good.
That in the moment, it's like, are you trying to restrict them because you don't want them to be great? Like,
There you go.
What's that, Jay-Z? Let me be great. Was that Jay-Z song? Like,
Yeah.
hey Jay, ain't no one stopping you from being great, bro. I think you're doing just fine. Let me be great. But that's in the church a little bit. He says, let me be great. It's like, yeah, sometimes being great is being delayed or
There
being
you go.
restricted.
Yeah.
What you think is being delayed because it's setting you up for your development.
Yes.
And I just find that powerful from your dad. Shout out to
It-
Pastor
it's-
Robert
and
Morris.
it's
I'm just
not-
shouting out people I don't even know, but like shout out like that wisdom of going, it's timing, it's
Yeah.
timing, it's timing.
And it's not always that people like Carrie aren't ready. It's just that little check. Are you going to respond correctly to somebody saying, not yet?
Oh, yeah.
That's all it
That's
is. It's
great.
not like you're not ready. You're not prepared. You need to, learn some more. You need to go through another class. It's like, no, you're ready. But there's this one little thing. Can somebody say no to you and you go, okay, yes, sir.
Very good.
That's tough.
And the answer is yes, because you didn't
Yes.
make me. God did. Some of you right
Oh,
now.
we're back.
My
some
God,
of you right
we're
now are
back.
listening to this, and some of you right now, you have got a portion of you, a quadrant of
It's
you.
a small sect of you.
Some
All of
you-
us
all of us
are
that's what I-
delayed.
Yes.
But all of us are
Are
not
not
denied.
denied.
I think it's really great. Robbie, we love you, bro.
Love
So
you, man.
much.
Maybe just move to Miami and just do this with us every week.
Well, I do love Johnson City, but I also love Miami.
Number 2.
So if you do need someone on staff,
Yes.
yes, to just live here and spy out good places for you to eat. and
Let me make a
get-
prediction for the church. There's, artists in residency. There's teaching pastors. You get ready. There's going to be podcaster in residence. It's
Yes.
like, oh, they represent our
It's
church.
happening.
It's like, what? Like, you're on staff to do podcasts? That's what Dakota's doing these days. Rich, no, it's not. No, that's Titus. Rich, no, come on,
No, that's
man.
Titus.
I'm down for it. No, that's Nelson. No, Rich, I don't want to work at the church. You don't understand. It's complicated. Don't bring my personal stuff on the camera, man.
Don't you do it.
No, it's Julia.
Oh,
no, I'm
no.
married
Don't
now,
you
but it's
do
like
it.
2 and it's dual.
She's 30 as well.
Yeah,
Shout out.
we love
Oh
all
my
the 30
God.
people. Folks, we love you guys so much. Robbie, you're amazing. The great Robbie Williams, ladies and gentlemen. The great Robert
Who's that?
Hilton, ladies and gentlemen. Do you know who Robert Tilton is?
Oh, God,
Okay, we'll stop.
please.
We'll stop. You do know that name.
I do know
Yes,
that
I.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, he's a.
Yeah.
I know him. I met him back in the day. True story. That's the AC coming on, and we love everybody out there. Do us a favor, if this blessed you in any way, let us know in the comments
go.
if you listened that long. But share this, spread the word, and give us any feedback you can on how we can get better, how we can serve you. But check us right here on the channel, on the podcast, for more content coming in the future. We love you guys. The best is in front of you.